قال الله تعالى في كتابه الكريم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم ويسألونك عن الأهلة قل هي مواقيت للناس صدق الله العلي العظيم. Respected brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. One of the most important topics of Islamic law is the topic of the Islamic Lunar Month and when the Islamic Lunar Month begins. As you see, it has a direct effect on our timed worships, our timed ibadat. When do we begin fasting? When the month of Ramadan begins. When do we stop fasting? When the month of Shawwal begins. Likewise with Hajj. When do we perform Hajj? On the 9th day of Dhul Hijjah. So we have to know when Dhul Hijjah begins so that we understand when the 9th of Dhul Hijjah is. So the Islamic Lunar Month is connected to our ibadat. And you find likewise that this topic is a topic of much controversy and confusion and misunderstanding. And because of this confusion that exists around this topic, you find there are lots of people that point their fingers and they make accusations towards Islam and specifically towards the ulama. And especially when you find this evident and clear when the Eid comes closer, people lose their patience. After fasting for 29 days, and there's a disagreement between the ulama and the day of Eid, you see people, they accuse the ulama as being backwards. They rely on old, archaic, obsolete methods of determining the new month, such as sending witnesses to see the moon. And they say that in this world, with all the science and technology that exists, we still have to rely on these old, out-of-date methods of the Stone Ages. And they accuse our ulama of being backwards. And you find there's lots of confusion about this topic. And that's why tonight we will go over this topic and explain it to clear these misconceptions. And we'll go over 3 important points. Point number 1, when does the Islamic Lunar Month begin? Number 2, can we use science to determine the new month? And number 3, if the ulama disagree on the day of Eid, what is the solution? So we begin with the first point. Technically, when does the Islamic Lunar Month begin? Now, in many non-Islamic lunar month and calendars, the new month begins with the new moon. Whenever the new moon is born, this signalizes the new month in those lunar calendars. And to quickly explain what the new moon is and how it happens, we know that the moon orbits around the earth. And the farther away it goes from the direction of the sun, the brighter and more complete we see it until it turns into a full moon. And the closer it goes towards the direction of the sun, the smaller it becomes as a crescent until we can no longer see it. Now the moon, it orbits around the earth and it goes towards the direction of the sun until it lines up perfectly between earth and the sun. So you have the sun, the moon, and then the earth. They're on one line. Astronomers call this conjunction or the new moon. So when the moon is exactly between earth and the sun, this is when it's called the new moon. And at this point, it is impossible to see the moon. If you have the sharpest eyes or the best telescope or binoculars in the world, you cannot see the moon. Why? Because there's nothing to see. Pitch black, darkness. Because we know the moon has no light. It only reflects the light of the sun. And since the sun is behind the moon, so all the light is being reflected towards the sun. Nothing is being reflected towards us on earth. So we cannot see the moon. So at this point, like I said, this is called the new moon. Many non-Islamic calendars, which are lunar calendars, they consider the new month beginning with the new moon. But in Islam, our ulama say that the new moon does not signalize the new month. When the moon is exactly between the earth and the sun, this doesn't mean the new month begins. No, we have to wait some more hours, at least 10 or 20 hours that I'll speak about in a few minutes. At least 10 to 20 hours after that, the new month begins. So when does it begin? Now as we said, the moon is exactly between the sun and the earth. Then once again it begins to orbit and drift away from the direction of the sun. It begins to drift away until once again it becomes visible. That very first second that the light of the moon reaches earth and it becomes visible to us on earth, this is when the new month begins. So it's not the new moon, it's when the light of the moon reaches earth. It's when the moon is visible to us on earth. This is when the new Islamic lunar month begins, when the moon, when the crescent is visible to us. Now you might ask why? Why isn't the new moon the beginning of the new month? Why isn't the visibility of the moon? And as I said, the visibility of the moon takes at least 10 to 20, sometimes 30 hours after the new moon. So why can't we consider the new moon as the beginning of the new Islamic month? The ulama, they give many proofs to this, but I'll just give you two today. Number one, the ulama, they use a verse, and number two, a hadith. So number one, the verse. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Holy Quran, وَيَسْأَلُونَكَ عَنِ الْأَهِلَّةِ. They ask you, Ya Rasulullah, about the moon and the crescent. What's the point of the moon and the crescent? Tell them, Ya Rasulullah, قُلْ هِيَ مَوَاقِيتُ لِلنَّاسِ. Tell the people that the moon and the crescent are signs of fixed periods. Or in other words, the moon and the crescent serves as a calendar to you people. So what does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mean that the moon serves as a calendar? To understand this, there is a very important question that sometimes is posed to Islam. And that question is, why did Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala base the Islamic calendar on the moon? Why is it a lunar calendar? Why didn't He base it on the sun, the solar calendar? Because we know the solar calendar existed for thousands of years. So when Rasulullah came, the solar calendar was already existing. So why did Allah base the Islamic calendar on the moon rather than on the sun, like the Gregorian calendar that we use, 2015? It's based on the sun. So why base it on the moon and not on the sun? The ulama, they say that there is wisdom behind this. That when it comes to the solar calendar, the lunar calendar, it has a special aspect in that it is very, very easy to determine which day out of the month it is. No matter who you are, even if you live outside the city, you're not connected with the city in a remote area, and you're a nomad, and you're absolutely uneducated, you can tell what day out of the month it is. How? Just go out and look at the moon. Based on the size of the moon, you can tell which day out of the month it is. If it's a full moon, you know it's in the middle of the month. If you can't see the moon, you know it's towards the end of the month or the beginning of the next month. So based on the size of the moon, everyone can tell which day out of the month it is. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the ulama, they say He chose the lunar moon, the lunar calendar, because it's easy and it's accessible to everyone. You do not need an astronomer to tell you what day out of the month it is. Just go and look and you know which day. The solar calendar, on the other hand, that's not the case. The solar calendar, if I were to ask you what day out of July it is, if you don't look at your iPhone and your calendar and at your planner, you have no clue which day it is. Now, who can tell? Only an astronomer. He looks at the sun, the angle of the sun, sunset, sunrise, the season. He does some calculations, then he can tell you, yes, it's July 1, for example. But you and I, an average person, we have no clue. If we go out, we can't find out which day out of the month it is. This is for astronomers. It's difficult. The lunar calendar, it's easy. Everyone can go look and see. The ulama, they say Allah chose the lunar calendar because it's easy. And it's much easier to tell than the solar calendar. You don't need astronomers. Now based on this, we understand what Allah is saying in the verse. قُلْ هِيَ مَوَاقِيتُ لِلنَّاسِ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying in the Quran, according to the Mufassirin, that the moon and the crescent serves as a calendar for everyone. It's easy, accessible. You don't need an astronomer. Now based on this, we go back to the question, why not the new moon? Why the visibility of the moon? The ulama, they say, based on this, we understand that the new moon cannot signalize the beginning of the month. It cannot. Why? Because what was the purpose of choosing the lunar calendar instead of the solar calendar? What did we say? Because it's easy, accessible to everyone. Is determining the new moon accessible to everyone? Can you and I tell when the new moon is born? Yes or no? No. Only an astronomer knows when the new moon is born. You and I have no clue when the new moon is born. So if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would have said and would have decided that the new month begins with the new moon, once again we would need the astronomers to tell us when the new moon is. And that defeats the purpose of choosing the lunar month to begin with. He chose the lunar month because it's easier, because everyone can tell. That's why he didn't choose the solar, because the solar is more precise, it's more accurate. But he chose instead the lunar because it's easier and everyone can tell. Now after he chose the lunar, if Allah would have come and said, the new month, the new lunar month begins with the new moon, once again we would need the astronomers. So what's the point? Why did you choose the lunar calendar? Choose the solar to begin with, it's more precise and accurate. So the ulama, they say that based on this verse, we understand that the lunar calendar is accessible to everyone. قُلْ هِيَ مَوَاقِيتُ لِلنَّاسِ. It is a calendar for everyone, not just for the astronomers. And thus they state that the new moon cannot mean the beginning of the month. It cannot signalize, or else we would need astronomers. They say the criteria of the new month has to be a sign that everyone can tell. And that's none other than what? The visibility of the moon. Because there's only one of two possibilities. Either the new month begins with the new moon, or it begins with the visibility of the moon. The first one we said that's wrong, it can't be, or else we would need astronomers. So obviously it's the second one. The visibility of the moon. Just go out, if you could see the crescent, then you know the new month has begun. So that's why the ulama, they say the new month begins only after the moon has reached a stage where it is visible by human beings on earth. So this is the first proof. The second proof, a hadith from Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam, that we understand from them that the new month does not begin with the new moon. We have many incidents in our hadith, numerous reports, where it would be the 29th day of either Sha'ban or Ramadan. And the next day, we call it Yawm al-Shak, the day of confusion. Why? Because it could either be 30th Sha'ban, 30th Ramadan, or it could be the first day of the next month, depending on the sighting of the moon. So 29 Sha'ban. The next day after 29 Sha'ban is either 30 Sha'ban or it's 1 Ramadan. Likewise, 29 Ramadan, the next day is either 30 Ramadan or the first day of Eid, the first day of Shawwal. So this is called day of confusion. We don't know which one it is. Numerous ahadith, the companions of the Imams, on those days, Yawm al-Shak, they would come to the Imams and they would ask the Imams, what do we do? Is tomorrow the last day of this month? Or is it the first day of the next month? And the Imams in all of these ahadith, they would give one general answer, the same answer. And this would be the general law in determining if that last day, Yawm al-Shak, the day of confusion, is the last day of this month or the first day of the second month. The Imams would always give the same answer. And this answer tells us the criteria of the new month according to the Imams. The Imams would say, Sum lil-ru'ya, waftar lil-ru'ya. Fast only if you saw the moon, and break your fast only if you saw the moon. So if it's 29th day of Sha'ban, tomorrow is Ramadan, I fast. The Imam says fast only if you saw the moon. If you didn't see the moon, tomorrow is not Ramadan. You can fast, mustahab, but it's not Ramadan. Likewise, the 29th day of Ramadan, do I break my fast tomorrow? It's Eid? Or no, I have to fast tomorrow as 30 Ramadan. The Imam says, وَافْطَرْ لِلرُّؤْيَا. Only break your fast and consider it Eid if you saw the moon. So the Imams in all these ahadith, they tell us that you can only consider the month, the new month beginning, if you saw the moon. If you saw the moon, then what? Then the new month begins. If you didn't see it, then the new month doesn't begin. The Imam could have said if the moon was born, but he didn't say that. He said if you saw it. So even if the new moon is born, it means nothing. I have to see it. It has to reach a stage in which it is visible. And now based on this, the ulama, they say that we don't have to literally see the crescent. We don't have to literally see it. What these ahadith mean is that the moon, the crescent, has to reach a stage in which if someone went and saw and there were clear skies, then it would be seen. But let's say no one took the effort to go and see, but it's there. Or it's a cloudy day, but we know for sure the moon is visible. Can we consider tomorrow Eid? Yes, because the moon has reached that stage where it is visible, but there was an obstacle or no one went to see. So the point is, it has to reach a stage in which it is visible. The question is, when does the moon reach that state in which it is visible? When? Can we predict it? When you come to Muslim astronomers, you see that Muslim astronomers, they say that there are at least 4 factors, criteria that have to be met in order for the moon to be visible. If these factors are not met, even if the new moon is born, you cannot see it. 4 factors, Muslim astronomers. Number 1, there is some disagreement, but this is the main view. Number 1, we have to take into consideration the age of the moon. It has to be at least 20 hours old. So after the new moon that we already explained, after that conjunction point where it is exactly between the earth and the sun, it begins to drift. 20 hours after that, at least, this is when the moon will be seen. Some areas 25 hours, some areas 30, sometimes even 35. But at least 20. Before 20, impossible. We cannot see it. That's number 1. Number 2, the second criteria is the elongation of the moon. The elongation is the degrees that the moon is away from the sun, east or west. Remember we said it begins to drift away? So how far away did it drift? It has to be at least 10 degrees away from the sun. If it is less, 9, 8 degrees, it will not be seen. Number 3, the altitude of the moon. How high above the horizon it is. They say it has to be at least 8 degrees above the horizon. If it's less, you won't see it, even if it's 30 hours old. And finally, number 4, the lagging time. Lagging time means the time between sunset and moonset. It has to be at least 42 minutes. If it's less than that, we will not see the moon. So only after these 4 criteria are met, the moon will become visible. Before that, the moon is not visible. Now, you might pose an argument here. You might say that the only reason the Imam, when he was asked, when does the new month begin? He said, "Al-Ru'ya," if you see it. The only reason the Imam said that is because this is 1400 years ago. There's no science, there's no technology, there's no astronomers. So if the Imam was alive today and he would see that there are astronomers and they can tell us when the new moon is born, obviously he would say, oh, then rely on the astronomers. Don't wait until you see it. If astronomers can tell you that it's already born, then rely on them. You don't have to wait until you see it. So the only way back then to know that the moon is born is to see it, or else how do I know it's born? You might pose this argument and say, based on that, now that we have science, we don't have to wait the 20 hours. Just ask the astronomer when the new moon is born, and that's it. Is this a valid argument? No, it's not. Why? Because, for your information, 1400 years ago, there were astronomers. And this ability to predict the new moon, this is so old, it dates back to the Greeks. 2500 years ago, read about the Greeks. They were able to predict the new moon. The only thing, with all this advancement of technology and science today, the only thing that happened was that back then, they could predict the moon to the minute. They would be 2-3 minutes off. Now they could predict it to the second. It's not a big difference. The point is, even during the times of the Imams, there were astronomers and they could accurately predict the new moon. So when the Imam was asked when the new month begins, why did he say wait until you see it? Why didn't he say go ask the astronomers when the new moon is born? This shows that the new moon means nothing. So what? Even if the astronomer tells you it's born, that doesn't mean the new month has begun. It's only once you see it. If you see it, then tomorrow is the new month. Whether it's Ramadan, whether it's Dhul Hijjah, whether it's Shawwal or any other month. And based on all of this, brothers and sisters, we understand the answer to the second question. Remember the second question? Can we use science and technology in determining the new Islamic month? The answer is obvious. The answer is that, what do you want to use from science to determine? What do you want to use from science? There are one of 2 possible reasons. One of 2 possible answers. Either you tell me, I will use the new moon, I will go back to science and ask them when the new moon is, or I will ask them when the moon is visible. There's only 2 options. What do you want to use from science in order to help you find out when the new month is? Number 1, you might say, option 1, I'll ask scientists and astronomers when the new moon is. Now the answer is obvious already, we already mentioned it. Yes, science is accurate, no one doubts this. They can tell you to the second when the new moon is born. But we said Islamically the new moon has no significance. So what? So what if it's born? It does not mean that the new month has begun. So if you want to go back to science and say, I'll ask scientists about the new moon does me no good. Then you say option B. I will ask scientists about the what? About the visibility of the moon. I'll ask them to predict for me when the moon will be visible for the naked eyes. And now there are some ulama that say even if we see the moon with the telescope, that's fine. But this is a rare view. Most ulama, they believe it has to be seen with the naked eye. And those ulama that say it's enough to be seen with the telescope, obviously the criteria that we gave, you would divide them by half. So you don't need 20 hours, you would need like 10, 12 hours and all the other criteria. But the majority of ulama, they say it has to be seen by the naked eye. It has to reach a stage in which it is visible by the naked eye. So you say option B. I ask the scientists to predict when it will be visible. I tell you, very good. Yes, now you are looking for the right criteria. The visibility of the moon, this is what determines what? The new month. But what's the problem? The problem here is in science itself. Astronomers and scientists, they themselves admit that when it comes to predicting the new moon, we're accurate. But when it comes to predicting the visibility of the new moon, we're not 100% certain. There is no astronomer that will tell you, I can predict the visibility of the moon with 100% certainty. Yes, they can give you a guess. They can calculate, and based on their assumption, based on their guess, they can give you an estimate. 70% chance it could be seen in your area. 60% chance. But with certainty they could tell you, no. Even themselves, I spoke with an astronomer, Muslim astronomer, he told me that there is no astronomer that can tell you with 100% certainty that in your area it can be seen. And that's why sometimes you see these astronomers, they say in your area it can be seen, clear skies, 20 people go, nobody sees it. So they're not 100% accurate. So that's why when you see the ulama, sometimes they do not rely on science to predict the new month. Is why? Not because they're backwards, not because they don't understand astronomy, not because they're living in the Stone Ages and they have to rely on witnesses and they don't accept science. No, trust me, they know more about astronomy than all of us. They have advisors, they have people that help them. The problem is science, when it comes to predicting the visibility of the new moon, is not always accurate. And that's why, however, the ulama do state that on a personal level, if you are certain that a certain astronomer, when he says the moon will be seen, he's right, if you're certain, khalas, you can rely on him. But that doesn't mean I can go and force other people to rely on him. No, it's a matter of opinion now. It's a personal matter. Each person, since it's not 100%, scientists themselves, they say it's sometimes we're right, sometimes we're wrong. If you on a personal level, if you are certain that certain astronomer, a certain website, a certain organization is always correct, and you're certain that they're right, when they say it will be seen, it will be seen, then you can rely on them. And that's why you see so many people, they do rely on certain websites, like for example, moonsighting.com, because they'll tell you that through the years, we saw that they're always accurate. They're 95% accurate, and we rely on them. But other people, they'll tell you, no, we don't see this accuracy, we're not convinced. So it's a personal matter. And that's why likewise there are some ulama as well, maraji, that do rely on these moon sighting websites. But however, there is no general law. Since science is not 100% accurate, it's a personal matter. Whoever is convinced, whoever has certainty, then they can rely on that. So this is the second point. Now we understand the answer. Can we rely on science or can we not rely on science? The new moon does me no good. Predicting the visibility of the moon, they're not always accurate. So that's why the ulama, they always want to rely on witnesses. Not because they're living in the Stone Ages, because the problem is in science here. Once science advances and is able to predict the visibility of the moon 100% without any flaws, without any mistakes, then you'll find the ulama have no problem relying on science. The ulama, they rely on science in many things. Salatul Dhuhr, Salatul Maghrib, Salatul Subh. Science is accurate about that, we rely on that. There's nothing wrong with that. DNA, we can rely on that. So it's not because they don't accept science, it's because predicting the visibility of the moon is very difficult, even for astronomers, and they're not always right. So this is question number 2. And before we go to question number 3, a loud salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. The third question that we posed, that many people pose and ask, if the ulama disagreed on the day of Eid, and it happens almost every year, what is the solution? What do we do? Myself, I'm the husband, I follow one marja. My Eid is tomorrow. My wife follows another marja. Her Eid is the day after tomorrow. How can we have a day of celebration when we're disunited like that? And so we even had some years where we had 3 Eids. And I know one family, the father, he follows one marja, his Eid was Friday. The wife, she follows another marja, her Eid was Saturday. The kids, they follow the third marja, their Eid was Sunday. So Friday, Saturday, 3 Eids. What's the problem? What's the solution to this problem? They say that it was, they say this as a joke, that it was the day of judgment. On the day of judgment, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala blows on that, on that horn, that trumpet, everyone wakes up. So one guy, he wakes up and he sees his friend who's buried beside him, he's still sleeping, he's still dead. So he goes and wakes him up. Go, speak, what's wrong with you? It's the day of judgment. So this guy, he wakes up, he says, no, my marja says tomorrow is the day of judgment. So even the day of judgment, we're going to disagree on that. So what's the solution when the ulama disagree? 3 points here, brothers and sisters. Point number 1, if we have 1 Eid, if we have 2 Eids, 3 Eids, or 10 Eids, it's not a big deal. We shouldn't we shouldn't create problems out of nothing. Whether we have 1 Eid or 10 Eids, it's not a big deal. So what? So what? Let us have 3 Eids. It's not the end of the world. We have to thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for all the benefactions that He gave us. Sometimes Allah spoils us so much, we run out of real problems, we go and we create problems out of nothing. There are people, your Shia brothers and sisters, there are Shia brothers and sisters in certain parts of the world, brothers and sisters, that they have to fast and they don't know whether Maghrib will come and they're still alive because they are targeted and being killed. You have Shia brothers in Iraq, while they're fasting, they have to go and fight and do jihad for sabil of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. While they are fasting, because there are those terrorists, Daesh, that are trying to kill them. He's fasting and he has to do jihad. There are people, you saw even, they're in the masjid, they are praying. In Kuwait, he's praying and he is killed. Alhamdulillah, here living in the West, we have this ni'mah that we forget about so many times. We have security, we have protection. We have to thank Allah for what we have, not for the small things that we don't have. We have to thank Allah that every day we sleep with a full stomach. And concentrate on thanking Allah for what we have. So if we had 1 Eid, 2 Eid, let's not make a big deal out of that. So what? We have to thank Allah for what we have. I remember once I was in a community and it was the 29th night of Ramadan. Tomorrow is either Eid or the day after. The ulama disagreed. There was a woman, she stood up and she started yelling and swearing at the ulama, and she almost did kufr even of Allah. Just because 1 day more. You see how we lose patience? Because of 1 day. We are so ungrateful to Allah that because of 1 day, later I may have to break my fast, or because I have 1 Eid, my husband, we are willing to do kufr in Allah. See how ungrateful the human being can become. For such a small reason, he wants to object to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So it's not the end of the world. Big deal. Let there be 10 Eids. So what? This is not a big deal. Life is a test. Even if it's a big problem for me, let me have patience. It's Ramadan. Ramadan is all about patience, brothers and sisters. So even if it's difficult, don't make a big deal out of it. It's not the end of the world. This is number 1. Number 2, a very important point that many people just do not understand, they're ignorant of, is when the ulama disagree, brothers and sisters, most of the times, it's not because they have a personal problem and they don't accept each other. Many of the times, the ulama disagree because their view and understanding of the Islamic lunar month is different. They're mujtahid, and each one has his understanding of Islam and of the Quran and the Hadith. So sometimes there's no way to reconcile. We have two mujtahids, each one has his own view. This is perfectly normal for human beings to disagree. You won't find two doctors that will agree on everything. You won't find two engineers, two lawyers, two human beings that will agree on everything. Likewise the ulama, each one is a mujtahid, he has his right to give his own view about Islam. And thus sometimes because of their view, they cannot reconcile. For example, one alim, he believes based on his conviction that you can rely on the telescope. The other alim says, no, I understand based on the hadith, it's the naked eye. The moon was seen with a telescope. So how do we unite them? There's no way to reconcile. This alim believes tomorrow is Eid because it wasn't seen with the eye. The other alim believes that no, tomorrow is Eid because it was seen with a telescope. What can we do about it? Each alim is a mujtahid, he has his right to give his view. One alim believes that if the moon was seen in Africa or Brazil, we people of Canada, we could rely on that. Tomorrow is Eid. The other alim says, no, Africa and Brazil has nothing to do with us. The moon has to be spotted in our area. So what do we do if this happens, if it's spotted in Brazil and there's two maraja? There's no way to reconcile. That's it. You have human beings will disagree on everything. Yes, some people will say that the solution is to have just one marja. Let's all follow one marja so that we're united under his umbrella, under his view. Now theoretically, yes, this is excellent, but practically it's not going to happen. I mean, who will be that one marja? We can't make it a dictatorship. Islam, we the followers of Al-Bayt, we believe the door to ijtihad is open. Whoever wants to go to the house and become a alim, he could be a marja. So we can't make it a dictatorship. The solution to different views isn't to what? To get rid of all the other views and make it a dictatorship. That's not a solution. In any democratic country, you have minorities, right? There are people that want one thing, there are people that want the other things. The solution to this disagreement isn't to get rid of the other views and make it a dictatorship. That's not a solution. The solution is to learn to live while others disagree with you. We have to accept to learn, to live in a society where there is more than one view, where there are people that have a view different than my view. So that's why I say, brothers and sisters, that we shouldn't be naive. Sometimes there is no solution to the problem. Because the alim, the ulama, each one has his own view. This one believes Eid is tomorrow, the other one believes it's the day after. There's nothing you can do about it. Each one has his own view, he's a mujtahid, and he has the right to give his view. That's number two. And finally, number three, the third point, before I get to the solutions, the third point is, many people when they say, why can't we unite, why can't we unite, why can't we unite? The answer is, yes, I'm with you. We would obviously prefer to unite. But this option isn't always available. This option isn't always the right option. Because unity by itself, brothers and sisters, unity by itself has no value, just to unite. Unity only has a value if it's with haqq, if it's uniting to do the wrong thing, or else if we all unite to do the wrong thing. What's the point of this unity? If we just wanted to unite and one of our goals was just to unite, let's all go and become Christians. Let's all go and become Sunnis. Is that a solution? Khalas, this is unity. Let's all follow Christians. Let's become atheists. Let's become Hindus. Unity doesn't mean that I what? That I go and unite with others at the cost of my belief, at the cost of my principles. I shouldn't compromise my principles. So unity only has a value if it is with haqq. If it isn't with haqq, then it has no value. When the alim believes that tomorrow is not Eid because he believes the telescope is useless or Brazil is useless, how can he tell his muqallideen tomorrow is Eid? Just to unite people, tell people tomorrow and ask people to break their fast on a day which he believes is Ramadan? There's no point in this unity if he believes they're doing haram. If according to his understanding tomorrow is Ramadan, we have to fast, how can he ask his muqallideen to break their fast? There's no point in unity, brothers and sisters, if it's at the cost of haqq and my principles and what I think is right. And that's why you see Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam, he tells Imam Ali ibn Abi Talib, he tells Ammar ibn Yasir about Imam Ali. He tells him, Ya Ammar, إِذَا رَأَيْتَ عَلِيًّا قَدْ سَلَكَ وَادِيًا وَسَلَكَ النَّاسُ وَادِيًا غَيْرَهُ فَاسْلُكْ مَعَ عَلِي وَدَعِ النَّاسِ. If you see the entire world go one way, But Ali ibn Abi Talib go one way. Should you say, let me unite? Wahda, unite? No. To hell with those people, the Prophet says. Let them go to hell altogether, unite in hell. Go with Ali ibn Abi Talib. That's why you see Imam Ali ibn Abi Talib is narrated that he says, because I was a man of principles and I stood with the haqq, everyone abandoned me. Everyone abandoned him. But does that mean, khalas, you go and you join them? No. If doing what's right means I'm all alone, then so be it. That's why the hadith, Imam Ali says, لا تستوحشوا من طريق الهدى لقلة سالكي. Do not be afraid if you're going on the right path that you'll be all alone. Trust me. If you want to do the right thing, you'll be lonely. Because most people are doing the wrong thing. So if I believe my marja' is the most knowledgeable one, and he says my Eid is the day after tomorrow, let the entire world have Eid tomorrow. Who cares? I do what I think is right. My marja' says it's the day after tomorrow, I hold it the day after tomorrow. So we shouldn't misunderstand the notion and the concept of unity. Unity is only good if it's with haqq. If it's not with haqq, if there's no way to follow my marja' and be united, then so be it. Then this unity will be the cost that we have to pay. And that's why you see, we read in dua iftitah every day, every night. What do we say? Allahumma inna nashku ilayka faqda nabiyina wa ghaybata waliyina. Ya Allah, we complain to you that our Prophet died and our Imam, our 12th Imam, he's in ghaybah. Yes, if Imam al-Mahdi was here, we'd have one Eid because he's one leader. But we complain to you, our Imam is in ghaybah, and one of the negative effects of the ghaybah of the Imam is we don't have one unified leader. We're going to have a bunch of maraja, a bunch of ulama. Khalas, this is a test, we have to have patience. There's nothing else we could do. And finally, what are the solutions? 2 quick solutions. Number 1, if to me, no, I have to unite. I can't have 2 Eids. I want to have 1 Eid, then there are 2 solutions. The first solution is don't even ask if the moon was sighted or not. If you don't ask the moon was seen or not, automatically Ramadan is 30 days for you. So the second day will be the Eid. There is no alim that says you have to go and try to find the moon. There is no alim that says you have to ask. Close your ears, turn off your phone, and say no one told me, no news reached me that the moon was spotted, so automatically the next day will be the Eid, the day after. So if it's either Friday or Saturday, Thursday night, I turn off my phone, I don't ask anyone if it was spotted, automatically Friday will be Ramadan and Eid will be Saturday. So it is not wajib for me to ask. Don't ask. If news doesn't reach you, khalas, Ramadan is automatically 30 days, it's not 29 days. This is one solution. Now if this isn't practical to you, you say no, with all the globalization of the world and the iPhone and the apps and the world is like a village, I can't. Obviously news will reach me. And maybe news will reach me that the moon was spotted in Brazil and then I'll have to have the first Eid and my wife the second Eid. The second solution, which is more practical, brothers and sisters, if my marja says my Eid is the second day, then on the first day that some other people will have their Eid, travel. Before Fajr, travel at least 22 kilometers outside the limits of your city. So once you get out of Halifax, count 22 kilometers at least, stand somewhere, Fajr, once Fajr begins, eat something because you're traveling, there's no fasting, and then khalas, go and you can eat and you can have that day as Eid. But you have to make up that day after Ramadan. But still you could have breakfast, you could have lunch, you could go to a restaurant, take your family. So if it's a big deal for me and I have the second Eid, then subhanAllah, I have noticed something. Every community that I go before Eid, there are people that complain. Who are the ones that are complaining? It's the ones that have the later Eid. I have never heard a brother or a sister complain if their marja' had the first Eid. So you see, it's all a matter of desire. It's all a matter of interest. Maslahah. Because my marja' said it's the second Eid, I complain. If my marja' says it's the first Eid, you will never hear anyone complain. It's not about right and wrong. It's not about unity. You want unity, unite on the second day. Let the other person that his marja' said the Eid is the first day, let him come the second day and have a second Eid. Let them unite with us. Why do we have to unite with them? But it's all about what? It's all about, no, I want to break my fast sooner. I want to eat sooner. It's all about the desires. They ask someone, what's the most thing you love hearing in Ramadan? Is it Quran? Is it dua iftitah? Is it dua Abu Hamza? He said the most thing I love is hearing adhan al-maghrib, and I can go and eat. That's the most thing I love hearing in Ramadan, adhan al-maghrib. So you find sometimes it's all about desires. Sometimes we're just in a rush, brothers and sisters. We fasted for 29 days. On those days, we've been fasting for 29 days. Let's just fast for one more day. What's the big deal? Is it the end of the world? Is Ramadan all about patience and taqwa? We spoke about this to teach us to fear Allah and to have patience and to say no to our desires. 29 days and then we mess all that up and we destroy everything just because we want to have one day less of fasting? La ilaha illallah. Look at where the Muslim Ummah has led us. Look at where we go. These are our problems in our communities. We have to thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for all the benefactions that He gave us. Don't look at these small petty things, 1 Eid, 2 Eids, 20, who cares? I don't even have an Eid, so what? The point is, Allah is satisfied with me. Whether it means 1 Eid or whether it means 3 Eids. I have to please Allah and think about what's right. So these are two solutions. There is a third option that some people resort to when there is a disagreement between the ulama and the day of Eid, which is not a Shari'i solution. What do they do? His marji' says the Eid is Saturday. Another marji' says it's Friday. So what do? Sayyidina, can I change my taqleed? He wants to switch his taqleed, his entire taqleed, salah, sawm, hajj, hijab, khumus, just so he could break his fast one day earlier. Do you see how narrow their vision is? Wallahi, tens of times throughout my life, they come and tell me, can we change our taqleed? Just because they want to have one day less of Ramadan. Why? This is not a solution, brothers and sisters. When I choose a marji', it's because he's the most knowledgeable, not because he lets me fast less, or not because he's easier. This is not the right criteria. If I do that, I'm playing games with Allah. I'm trying to fool Allah. I'm fooling myself if I do that. So changing my marji' is never a solution. The solutions, we said either don't ask, automatically it's 30, the later one, or I can travel and I can make that up after the month of Ramadan. With this, brothers and sisters, I remind you, when that day comes, even this year, there will be a disagreement. Eid will either be Friday, July 17th, or Saturday, July 18th. Let us not lose patience. Let us have to eat. It's not the end of the world. It's not the end of the world. This is a test. Our Imam is in a ghaiba, and this is the price that we have to pay. Let's have patience. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, inshallah, will reward us in the best of ways. I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to give us the tawfiq that we continue fasting during the month of Ramadan and to give us that taqwa that was the purpose of the month of Ramadan. And I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to accept our a'mal and to bless us throughout this month. Wa akhiru da'wana and alhamdulillahi rabbil alameen. Wa sallallahu ala Muhammadin wa alihi al-tahirin.